Hey guys and gals, hope everyone's doing well. So this next video is going to be primarily for the purpose of showing how to remove the intercooler cage. That's this big black plastic thing here that houses the intercooler. The main reason you would want to do that is to give you access to the spark plugs to do a spark plug change. You can see here, if you look, there's one coil pack right there. That's that little squared off piece. There's two other coil packs that you can't even see because of all this stuff that's here. So once we remove the intercooler cage, we can remove this turbo inlet elbow and a few other things, and we'll have a direct straight shot to the spark plugs, making removing them super easy. And I just did it on the other side, so I can tell you it makes a huge difference. The turbo inlet pipe has already been disconnected because we just did the air filter. That's why the whole rear end of this car is off. As you know, the air filter requires all of this to come off. Also, the Y pipe has been removed, which connects right to here. Again, all of this was done to change out that air filter right there, which, you know, that's always a fun job. But anyways, with all of this taken apart, it makes it a great time to do the spark plugs and remove this intercooler cage. If you like what you're about to see, and of course you don't know until you see it if you're really gonna like it, but if you think you're gonna like it, don't forget to hit like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. I want all feedback, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Let me know and stay tuned because this is gonna be an interesting one and I hope it helps you out. All right, so I'm just gonna start by letting you know that the majority of these screws that you're gonna be removing will require either a T25 Torx bit, a T30 Torx bit, and in some cases you may need a 10 millimeter hex socket. All right, next up we've got these two here. These are T30s. This thing just pops out and you got two more screws, except these are nuts and these are 10 millimeter. All right, so this loom of wires here that you see me playing with, that comes down from where the rear tail light is. Comes into this little box here. There's three T25 screws holding this little box here that loom is attached to, and you cannot remove the intercooler cage without disconnecting all of that. Look, they make a tool for everything, and I bought this thing knowing one day I would need it. This is meant specifically for pulling electrical connections, and look at that. I think I mentioned to you before, there is a T30 screw right back there, but that's what this one is right here. It's a T30. All right, there's a few T25 screws holding on the heat shields to this intercooler cage. One of them is right here, and there's two underneath. There's also a couple of nuts up top, up in there, that need to be removed. We're gonna have to separate these tubes here, these two tubes. All right, so just to show you what I did here, I just took a little, look at this little awl to spread this clamp out a little bit. And then that allowed me to pull out this tube. Later, when I go to reconnect it, I'm just gonna push it back in right up to that little line that you see there. I'll push it back in and then I'll tighten the clamp again. There's just a couple more things that need to be removed. Number 1 and 2 are these clamps right here. This is a clamp, one clamp that goes from the intercooler to the turbo, and the other clamp here that goes from this is the inlet, the turbo inlet pipe, and that's the inlet elbow. And actually we are going to basically remove this clamp, and number 3 is this clamp. I think that takes an 11 or a 13 star bit. I'm going to double check that. And then these clamps here can be done with either a flathead screwdriver, like you see me doing right there, or what I believe is a 7mm socket. First time I ever try to remove one of these types of things, I always get a little bit nervous, but really they just come off with a little tugging. As you can see, that one just pulls right off there. And then the same thing up here. And you just gotta, there, see that? Slides right off. All right, if everything has been removed the way it's supposed to be, then this should more or less wiggle its way out. If it doesn't completely wiggle its way out, it means that I forgot to remove a screw. Well, looky there. This heat shield right here we're going to remove. There's just 2 screws, I believe, holding this in. One here and one there. And then there's a heat shield right back there. And this thing, we're going to remove this. This here, once we loosen this clamp all the way, as it is there, you'll see this is going to come off. Look, I did this one-handed. That's how easy that thing is. This is attached, by the way. We want to be careful not to pull on that. By the way, you'll use a 14mm hex socket to remove this heat shield. To remove that 14mm nut that is that last one that's holding this heat shield here underneath, you'll want a small ratchet. All right, it looks like the last 2 screws we need to remove are these 2 right here, which will remove this last little heat shield and give us access to, there's spark plug 1, 2, and 3. Let's see. This one is a little tricky. The value of having a lot of different tools. Have this hand T30 screwdriver. And looky here. 1, 2, 3 coil packs. By the way, all 3 of these will remove with a T30. All right, so we'll start with this coil pack here. To remove this, we want to disconnect. We want to disconnect the electrical connection there, and that's pretty easy to do. You just push down on that clamp there, and then this should just pop out. There we go. You see it's already kind of popped out there. Once that's popped out, well, you don't have to do it in this order. You could actually just remove the screw first, but you use a T30. You can see that that comes out. It doesn't have to come out all the way. You remove the plug, and then this coil pack will just pull out. You'll hear it pop. But you want to be careful not to damage this O2 sensor, so just be careful. There we go. That pops right out. And now you'll use a 14mm 12-point spark plug socket. These are magnetized. Again, that's 14mm 12 points magnetized. To go ahead, reach up in there and start removing the spark plug. Now, doing this first time here, let's go ahead and see how stuck this thing is. Not too bad. And there she is. We're going to put a coating of dielectric grease. We're going to smear it around this white part and even a little bit on the tip here. Here's a smear. Just going to squirt a whole bunch on there. This electrode part there. That needs to be pointing at the 12 o'clock mark. That needs to be at the 12 o'clock mark when inserting it into the hole. So, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to pay very close attention as I am guiding this spark plug in, that is at the 12 o'clock mark when going into the hole. All right, here we go. With the torque wrench. You hear that click? 17 foot-pounds. New coil pack goes in. You can see they actually put some dielectric grease already in there. You slide that new coil pack in. And we line up the screw so that it goes right over the hole. We want to make sure that we can get this plug on there. I heard it click, and then you could just start screwing this in again. Now we're just going to repeat the same steps on this side. Maybe should do this one first, and then while that one is out, do this one. Let's see how that goes. All right, here is the last spark plug. All right, I like to put a fresh little dab of silicone lubricating grease around O-rings. Let's see, goes right there nice and smooth. We can go ahead and put this clamp back and start tightening this with the E11, I think it was, but I'm doing it by hand because that's how I roll. And start by putting this heat shield where it belongs, right there. So the next thing we do is we put this heat shield back in, and you can see we got some holes here to line up and some screws there. Now I'm gonna use these guys. No, that's not the right one. Here, and then the other one I'm gonna have to get underneath. But it does use, these do use a 14 mil. In case you want to watch me suffer. Alright, let's see. I know that goes there. And this goes here. Push this back in, clamp it down. I almost forgot this important piece. Here is this little clip thing that goes there, and then this goes here, that clips in. Alright, at this point we finished putting the intercooler cage back on. We finished installing the new spark plugs and coil packs. And all that's really left to do is to reassemble the back end here after completing the air filter replacement. And we should be good to go.